I found out my daughter was a criminal on my 50th birthday, but I didn't know it yet. I just thought she was finally becoming the successful, loving child I always hoped she would be, until the flashing blue lights in my driveway 11 days later shattered that illusion forever. Was I wrong for turning over the evidence that essentially ended her life as she knew it, or would you have protected your own flesh and blood no matter the cost? I need you to listen to how this unfolded because I am still sitting here in an empty house wondering if I destroyed my family or finally saved it. It all started with what I thought was the most thoughtful gift I'd ever received. A brand new, high-end tablet, sleek and expensive, wrapped in silver paper that felt like a symbol of our reconciled relationship. My daughter Chloe and I had a rocky few years, mostly because she drifted through low-end jobs and always seemed to be hanging out with a crowd that I didn't quite trust. But for the last 6 months, she'd changed. She told me she'd landed a job at a high-end tech firm doing administrative work, and she started dressing better, acting more mature, and actually showing up for Sunday dinners. On the morning of my birthday, she walked in with a glow I hadn't seen in years, handed me that tablet, and told me she wanted me to have the best because I'd sacrificed so much for her. I was moved to tears, thinking that all the hard work I'd put in as a single father had finally paid off, and that Chloe was finally on the right path. For the next week, I used that tablet for everything, reading the news, watching videos, and organizing my photos, feeling a sense of pride every time I turned it on. I remember sitting on the porch, showing it off to my neighbor, telling him how my girl had finally made it big in the tech world. He congratulated me, but there was a knot in my stomach I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the way she had insisted on setting up the password herself, or how she checked her phone every 5 minutes during my birthday dinner. But on the 8th day, things started to get weird. I was trying to upload some old family photos to the cloud when I noticed a file folder buried deep in the directory that I didn't remember creating, labeled with a series of random hexadecimal numbers and dates. Curiosity got the better of me, and when I opened it, I didn't find family photos or work documents. I found hundreds of scanned copies of sensitive legal documents, bank statements that didn't belong to Chloe, and high-resolution photos of people's private residences. My heart dropped into my stomach as I realized my daughter wasn't a corporate assistant. She was involved in something much darker, likely identity theft or high-stakes casing for robberies. I spent 3 days in a fog of denial, staring at the screen and then staring at the door, waiting for her to come over so I could confront her. But the more I looked, the more I realized this wasn't just a mistake, it was an operation. Every evening I would sit in my armchair, the tablet heavy in my lap, scrolling through the metadata of the files I'd discovered. The sheer scale of what I was looking at was staggering. There were blueprints of high-security residential buildings, schedules of armored truck deliveries, and even scanned passports of people I had never heard of. I felt like I was looking into the soul of a stranger, not the girl I taught to ride a bike or helped with her chemistry homework. The conversational, witty Chloe I saw at dinner was a mask. The person on this tablet was cold, calculating, and dangerously efficient. I found a hidden messaging app that stayed logged in, and as I read back through the archives, I felt a physical sickness rise in my throat. She wasn't just a participant. She was the one coordinating the logistics for a massive theft ring. She spoke to her associates with a chilling level of authority, using technical jargon and coded language to discuss clearing out the vaults and scrubbing the digital footprints. My mind raced through every possible excuse. Maybe she was being coerced. Maybe she was a whistleblower trying to gather evidence. But the messages were clear. She was complaining about the cut she was taking and how she needed to launder the next batch of cash through her new job. The job I had been so proud of. The job that was supposed to be her fresh start. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, a half-eaten sandwich in front of me, staring at a photo of a family on the tablet, a family whose lives she was preparing to dismantle, and I realized that the tablet wasn't just a gift. It was a Trojan horse. She hadn't bought it for me out of love. She had hidden her most incriminating files on a device she knew the police would never think to check. Her boring, law-abiding father's birthday present. She used my house, my trust, and my celebration as a digital safety deposit box for her crimes. As the days passed, the weight of the secret became unbearable. I would look at the photos of her as a child on the mantelpiece, and then look at the encrypted spreadsheets on the screen. I started noticing things I had missed before. The way she would step outside to take work calls that lasted an hour, the brand new car she claimed was a company lease, and the way she would get twitchy if I ever moved the tablet from the charging station. One night I saw a message pop up in real time. It was from a contact named Vulture. It said, "The old man's place is the perfect ghost. Keep the drive there until the heat dies down. We move on the 24th. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just using the tablet, she was using me. She was using my clean record and my quiet life as a shield for her syndicate. I felt a mixture of rage and profound grief. How could she put me at risk like this? If the police had raided my house and found that tablet, I would have been the one going to prison. She was willing to sacrifice my freedom to save her own skin. I spent the entire 10th night packing the floor, the tablet sitting on the table like a ticking bomb. I thought about the families she was hurting. I thought about the elderly couple whose bank statements were scanned into a folder titled Easy Targets. As a social worker, I had spent my life protecting the vulnerable, and here was my own daughter preying on them. The moral conflict was tearing me apart. If I protected her, I was betraying everything I stood for. If I turned her in, I was destroying the only family I had left. I thought about her childhood, the way she used to cry when she saw a bird with a broken wing, and I tried to reconcile that image with the woman who was currently planning to ruin dozens of lives for a bigger paycheck. I went back into the messages, digging deeper, hoping to find some shred of humanity, some sign that she was doing this for a good reason. Instead, I found a conversation where she joked about how easy it was to manipulate me. She called me clueless and the perfect cover. That was the moment my paternal instinct died and my conscience took over. I realized I wasn't protecting my daughter. I was protecting a predator who happened to share my DNA. Every time I looked at that tablet, I felt like I was holding the stolen dreams of 100 strangers. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and every time the phone rang, I jumped out of my skin. I began to document everything, taking photos of the screen with my old phone, creating a backup of her backup, because I knew that if I was going to do this, I had to do it right. I had to ensure that there was no way for her to wiggle out of it, or worse, for her associates to come after me. I felt like a spy in my own home, a traitor to my own blood, but the more I read, the more I realized that Chloe had already betrayed me the moment she walked through my door with that wrapped box. I thought about the victims, the real people behind the account numbers. I saw one file that contained the medical records and insurance payouts for a woman who had just lost her husband. Chloe was planning to intercept her settlement. It was so cold, so calculated, that I couldn't breathe. I stayed up until the sun came forth, watching the dust motes dance in the light of a room that no longer felt like home. I realized that my daughter was gone. The girl I raised had been replaced by a monster of greed, and if I didn't act, I was just as guilty as the people pulling the triggers. The level of detail in her planning was sociopathic. She had notes on which neighbors were out of town, which houses had dogs, and which security systems were outdated. She was a ghost in the machine, and I was her haunting ground. I walked through my house, touching the things I had worked so hard for, the furniture, the books, the memories, and felt a wave of nausea knowing it had all been tainted by her presence. She had sat on my sofa, eating my food, while she plotted the financial execution of people just like me. I knew then that there was no going back. Our relationship was a lie, a carefully constructed facade designed to keep her safe while she tore the world apart. I felt a strange sense of clarity amidst the grief. The daughter I loved was a memory, and the woman who gave me that tablet was a stranger I needed to stop. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice between the daughter I loved and the truth that was staring me in the face. Before I tell you what happened when the police arrived, and what I discovered about the night she gave me that gift. I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have deleted the files to save her, or would you have called the authorities? I sat in my darkened living room on the 11th night, the tablet glowing on the coffee table like a radioactive brick, when a heavy knock at the door changed everything. I didn't even have to call them. It turned out the high-end tech firm Chloe worked for was actually a front that the authorities had been monitoring for months, and that tablet was a company asset she had stolen to gift to me, thinking it was the one place they wouldn't look for the encrypted data she'd siphoned off their servers. When I opened the door to 3 detectives and a swarm of officers, I didn't lie. I handed them the tablet and told them everything. I watched from the porch as they swarmed her apartment down the street, the red and blue lights painting the neighborhood in a strobe effect of chaos. Watching them lead Chloe away in handcuffs while she screamed that I had betrayed her, that she did it all to give me a better life, was the most soul-crushing moment of my existence. She looked at me with such pure, unfiltered hatred that I felt the breath leave my lungs. In the following weeks, the full extent of her betrayal came to light. It came out in court that she had been the primary architect of a scheme that defrauded elderly people out of their life savings, the very people I spent my career helping as a social worker. The success, she showed me, was built on the ruins of hundreds of families. She had used the money from these thefts to buy the very gifts and clothes she used to convince me she was doing well. Every Sunday dinner we had shared over the last 6 months had been funded by the suffering of people just like me. The prosecutors showed evidence that she had planned to flee the country the day after the 24th, leaving me with the tablet and all the evidence. She was going to leave me to take the fall while she started a new life in a non-extradition country. The realization that she never intended for us to have a future together, but only used me as a temporary hiding spot, was the final blow. Even after all the evidence was presented, even after the victims stood up and told their stories of losing their homes and their dignity, she still wouldn't look at me. She sat at the defense table with a cold, stony expression, her lawyers trying to paint her as a victim of her associates, but the digital trail on that tablet was undeniable. It was her handwriting, her voice, her greed. When the judge read the sentence, I felt a strange mix of relief and total devastation. She was sentenced to 12 years in a maximum security facility. The aftermath has been a lonely road. My ex-wife blames me for snitching on our child, and my friends don't know what to say to me. My house feels haunted by the ghost of the daughter I thought I had. I walk past her old bedroom, and I don't see the little girl who loved drawing. I see the woman who sat at my table and lied to my face while she stole from the helpless. I've spent hours talking to a therapist, trying to figure out if there were signs I missed during her teenage years, or if she was always this way and I was just too blinded by love to see it. The truth is, I'll never know. Chloe is now serving her sentence, and she refuses to take my calls or read my letters, claiming I'm the reason her life is over. But deep down, I know the truth. Her life was over the moment she decided that other people were just numbers on a spreadsheet to be exploited. I lost my daughter that day, but I know that if I had hidden that tablet, I would have been an accomplice to her cruelty. I would have been just as guilty as she was. It's a heavy burden to carry, knowing your child isn't the person you thought they were. But sometimes the truth is the only thing that can set you free, even if it leaves you alone in a quiet house with nothing but memories of a girl who doesn't exist anymore. I still have the silver wrapping paper from the tablet stored in a box in the garage, a reminder of the day I thought I was the luckiest father in the world. Now, it's just a reminder that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we know the least. I wake up every morning and look at the driveway, half expecting to see her car, but all I see is the empty asphalt where the police cars once sat. I have started volunteering at a center for the victims of financial fraud, trying to give back a fraction of what she took, but it never feels like enough. The silence in this house is the loudest thing I've ever heard. I often wonder if I should have seen it coming. The subtle shifts in her personality, the expensive taste that appeared out of nowhere, the coldness in her eyes when she talked about work. But a father's love is a powerful filter. It filters out the flaws and highlights the hope. I was so desperate for her to be okay that I let myself be used as a shield. Now I spend my nights reading about the lives she ruined, trying to put faces to the names in those files. Each story is a puncture wound to my heart. One man lost the money he'd saved for his granddaughter's college. Another woman couldn't afford her medication. This is the legacy my daughter left behind. If I hadn't handed over that tablet, I would be carrying their misery on my shoulders for the rest of my life. I hope that one day, years from now, she'll understand why I did it. I hope she'll see that I wasn't just being a good citizen. I was trying to save whatever scrap of her soul was left. But until then, I live in the quiet, knowing that I did the only thing a decent man could do, even if it broke my heart into a million pieces. Like this video if you think I made the right choice by standing for the truth, and subscribe for more stories where life isn't always as simple as we want it to be. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section, because I really need to know if I'm the villain in her story or the hero of my own. I'll see you all in the next story.